This is the Chapter 12 Nutrition and Energy Commentary. So this is a biochemistry chapter. Consequently, you're going to have to do a lot of memorizing. So, the science of nutrition is an applied field focusing on the study of food, water, nutrients, and ways in which living organisms use them. So, we study in nutritional chemistry how biochemicals, which are related to food nutrients, maintain an organism. So either to break down those molecules in order to release energy that powers the organism, or to give molecules to the body so that way they can use it as building blocks in order to build important things within the organism. So it's a lot of talking without a lot of slides. So the goal of nutrition is to determine the components of a sound diet and best ways to maintain your health, such as through body weight and the best foods in order to help people who have specific genetic ailments. So they might have specific genetic diseases where they might need extra types of nutrients more than the average person may need, or to avoid specific types of nutrients. The best example is lactose. Some people are lactose intolerant. Consequently, you want to avoid any type of products that have lactose sugars. And let's move on. Definitions, definitions, definitions. Know these definitions. Macro versus micronutrients. Macronutrients are anything you need in large amounts. Proteins, lipids, carbohydrates you need in large amounts, both to break down as energy and as building blocks in order to build important structures within the organism itself, within the cells of your body, if you will. Micronutrients are anything you need in small amounts. So vitamins, minerals, anything that might contribute to coenzymes or cofactors for use by enzymes. Those are all micronutrients. They tend to be found in, they tend to be recorded in labels in amounts such as in milligrams or micrograms. So very small amounts required. Other nutritional requirements that the body doesn't use for energy: cellulose. Specifically, anything where it's not a macro or micronutrient but needed to prevent other ailments such as constipation. So cellulose is a type of nutrient we call fiber. So they always talk about making sure that you have plenty of fiber in your diet. Why? You don't actually use it for food or for building up structures within your body, but it makes things smoother, if you will. Now, oftentimes, nutritionists have figured out for the general population how much you need of each type of macro and micronutrients. So we basically have what we call daily values. Those are on the back of food labels, and we have two types. We have reference daily intakes, RDIs, and we have daily reference values, DRVs. RDIs are for proteins, vitamins, and minerals. Daily reference values are for other types of nutrients and food components, such as fat, as well as fiber. So to make things easy in our world, since we're not obsessed like nutritionists are, usually they're just all clumped together in the term daily value, if you take a look at the back. If you're going to a nutritionist, then they'll actually break it down into specific RDIs and DRVs. Know all of these definitions. Know that fiber is cellulose. Know what it's used for. And know macro versus micro. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. No, I'm not testing you on the calories. Although I am going to give you some insight in what you need to know. Oftentimes, instead of saying thousands of calories, they say kcal. Nutritionists go one step further. Sometimes they don't even say that. They simplify it as a capital C. So if you're relating calories that you see on the back of a nutritionist label versus the energy released in a chemistry classroom, it's roughly 1,000-fold. So if something says this has 3 calories in it, then they actually mean 3,000 little calories in chemistry land. Here is the rough breakdown of how much energy is released per gram of our substance. In this case, carbohydrates releases 4,000 little calories, fat releases 9,000 little calories, and protein is 4,000. Notice oftentimes we like to break down carbohydrates and proteins into a smaller, more compact, high energy biomolecule that we can store. And everybody knows what this is: fat. Our body still thinks we live in the caveman days, so it doesn't know when the next saber tooth we're going to eat or the next time we're going to be able to pick berries. So any type of excess food that it knows it's not going to need to break down for energy for a while, it stores as fat. Here is the breakdown of energy requirements. Did you know it takes 60,000 little calories to sleep for 1 hour? So basically your body's not doing anything. You have what's called a basal metabolism. That's the energy it takes just to keep your body alive and functioning, much less actually doing something such as walking or swimming. So there is a lot of energy that's burned per day just to exist. But these are the rough calories it takes in order to perform actual physical work or exercise. So 200 kcal per hour for walking, 500 for swimming, and 750 for running. Now, if you do the math, you notice on average you have a lot more energy that you take in versus you expending, which is why we have so much fat on our bodies. So it's not you, it's the beauty of society and how little work we have to do versus the food that we are able to take in. What do you have to know here? You don't have to know any of these except for this over here. You have to know this and know what I mean by big calorie versus the little kcals. So memorize this portion only. But reflect on this portion just to give you an idea of how many calories of each one you have. I also want to point out that when it comes to fat calories that you ate, basically the fat calories go directly to the storage fat on your body, what they call subcutaneous unwanted body fat. So you don't actually break down the fat for energy, you actually just goes directly to store it. It's the carbohydrates and proteins which are directly broken down. And the body actually has its own uniquely stored what we call visceral fat, which is actually used in your day-to-day process. So this fat right here, this storage fat, is only actually used during exercise after 30 minutes or when you're starving. Carbohydrates are the main dietary source. Our bodies are geared toward maximum results when we have plenty of carbs in our body. They're also good building blocks for synthesis of cell and tissue components. Carbohydrates make really good chemical antennas for interactions of biomolecules within your body. Excess calories associated with carbohydrates due to high-calorie foods eaten with carbohydrates. Bottom line, that means is there are a ton of calories found within beverages such as Coke or within candy. And that's oftentimes where all that excess energy, if it's not burned down for during exercise, then obviously it's turned into fat. We have two types, simple and complex. Complex is broken down over time at a slower rate, so it's considered the good type of sugars. Simple carbohydrates speaks for itself. Those are the simple monos and di sugars, monosaccharides and disaccharides. This is what candy is mostly made up of, and consequently the body goes through it really quickly, so you get a nice rush, and then the body realizes that too much, and then you go through a lull. Complex, there's a nice steady burn throughout the day, so it's better to have these. These are found in whole foods such as fruits, breads. Proteins, only macronutrient with established RDAs. Children have greater need than adults do. So memorize this portion right here. On the previous slide, memorize everything. 12% of diet should be proteins, and they're also a good source of energy. We've already talked about this. Notice it's a capital C, so little c would be a kcal, 4,000 calories per gram. Although it's broken down for energy, it's the main source of building blocks for our most important structures, such as enzymes, hormones. So your heart muscles, your immune system is all based on the building blocks using proteins. Now, there are certain amino acids that the body can synthesize on its own. There are other ones we need directly from our diet. The ones we need directly from our diet we call the essential amino acids. These cannot be synthesized by our body, so they need to be taken in from food directly. No, you don't have to memorize those, at least not yet. These you'll have to put on the final, but I'm not going to test you on these for the quiz or the upcoming exam. Why would they put them on the final and not the quiz and exam? Well, for the final you get a cheat sheet, so then I could ask for those. Complete protein foods contain all the essential amino acids in the proportions needed by the body. Chicken, fish are the ones that come to mind. Incomplete protein foods do not. So any type of cookies, which technically has a little bit of protein, not much, depending on the type of cookie you have, that would be considered an incomplete if it doesn't have everything. Fats. Yes, we actually need fats. It's the backbone energy source we absolutely must have in order to continue to exist no matter what terrible times we're in. Concentrated source of energy provides twice the energy than an equal mass of carbohydrate. So that's why we love using it as a high energy storage unit. Some fatty acids cannot be synthesized by the body. You had to memorize those in the past. So those are the essential fatty acids, linoleic and linolenic acid. Generally found in the form of triglycerides, unsaturated and saturated. We've already talked about this. Yes, you need to memorize all of these facts. I could give you fill in the blank. I could give you a general compare and contrast question. So there's another. That's another macronutrient. The biggest problem with fats is we live in a nation of excess. So any type of excess calories is turned into fat. If you have fat in the food you're taking in, that's directly transported to the fat you already have, so you just multiply the amount of fat. So that's why fat intake should always be in moderation. Most nutritionists think you need a maximum of 30% fat to your diet. We can get anywhere from 50 to 70% in our diet. So we need to decrease the national average consumption level of 42% to around 30%. Hey, we've improved a bit. So vitamins. Vitamins, organic compounds that cannot be produced by the body in amounts needed for good health. Two types, water-soluble and fat-soluble. Memorize. Water-solubles are polar in nature, so they can dissolve in water. Fat-soluble are non-polar in nature, so they dissolve in inorganic solvents, or in our body, they dissolve around other fats, such as micelles, or in special non-polar environments, such as the fat storage vacuoles found in fat cells. Water-soluble vitamins, food for thought. You cannot overdose on water-soluble vitamins. Don't quote me on this, because I'm sure there's somebody who will try and somebody will succeed and then they die, and that's bad. So from what I hear, it's harder to take in too much water-soluble vitamins. Why? Because they're water-soluble. If you have too much, then you will urinate out the excess amount. Fat-soluble vitamins, however, they are stored permanently. The only way to get rid of the fat-soluble vitamins is to use them. So you can overdose in fat-soluble vitamins, which can be bad. Memorize all of these. So where might you overdose in fat-soluble vitamins? Well, if you're taking a lot of over-the-counter vitamins in containers, then that could be an issue. You're not going to overdose on fish or chicken. You'll gain extra fat, but you're not going to overdose on these vitamins. You could overdose them from good old vitamin containers. So careful on how many once-a-day vitamins you take. Minerals. Minerals are essentially metals or nonmetals. They tend to be in the ion form. So you'll see them as a calcium ion or a phosphate ion. They are used as cofactors. They are used in inorganic structures such as bones. They make a nice little matrix in your body, a calcium phosphate matrix. There are other types of minerals, the ones that occur in small amounts that we don't need a lot of, we call trace minerals. So major minerals are more than 5 grams. Trace minerals are less than 5 grams. So know this. Memorize and memorize. Trace minerals tend to be mostly found as enzyme cofactors such as iron and hemoglobin. So know those. Let's move on. Energy in the biosphere. This is a really lame picture, but you're still responsible for knowing it. So in this case, here is the circle of life. We get energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, water, and energy due to photosynthesis within plants. Allows them to make their own food, carbohydrates and oxygen. We then take in the food by eating it, and through the chemical process of respiration, we'll explain that later, we produce energy along with byproducts of carbon dioxide. Consequently, the carbon dioxide and water is recycled for the plants, and that's one circle of life. I do want to point out that in biochemical terms, the energy is used to convert ADP to ATP. And it also produces excess energy, excess heat. But the big thing I want you to focus on is it produces ADP to ATP. The one we're going to focus on most in this class is biosynthesis. We're going to get a little bit to this one right here, but we're not going to touch motion. The motion they're referring to is muscle contractions for your muscles, but we're not going to focus on that one. We'll definitely focus on biosynthesis, and later on we'll start getting into active transport just a bit. So basically, ATP is a rechargeable battery, and ATP is used to power important biochemical processes, biosynthesis, and active transport when we get to it. Here is, again, in word form, the overall energy process. Photosynthesis creates this, and then this is then broken down via respiration to form this right here, and it's a circle. So you are responsible for knowing this. If I give you these reactants, then you should be able to predict these products. Notice these two reactions are the reverse of each other. So if I give you this as reactants, then you should be able to predict this as products. So no respiration and photosynthesis. Here is the circle again. I'm beating the circle to death. Let's move on. This is a great stopping point.